Okay, so what you're seeing here are some examples of matching high-resolution 2D images to a 3D model. This uses some freely available example data from the British Museum, which I'll show you how to acquire later on in the video. And now that you've seen a few examples, let's see how these image matches were done in Blender. Okay, so all of the code for this image matching plugin is available online for free on GitHub. You can just come up to this address here and you will see it all laid out there. If you scroll down a bit, there's a bunch of information about how the plugin works, how to install it, and so on. The important bit being here, the installation and tutorials. And you see there's installation instructions and an image matching tutorial. And that really goes through step by step, every single process with images and videos and so on. So I would recommend checking that out. It's a great reference. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through matching a couple of images to this example data, just so you can see the entire process from end to end. Okay, so the first step is to download Blender if you don't already have it. So you go to their website, blender.org, come to the download tab and just download whatever the latest version is and install it. I already have 3.5 installed, so that's what I'm going to use, but you can use whatever version you would like. Then we have to get the latest version of the plugin. For that, we can scroll back up again. We can come over here to this Releases tab, click on it, and then click on the top one that says imagematcher.zip, and that will start the download. And you can see it gets downloaded up here. I've done this a lot of times, as you can see, but at this point you've got it downloaded, you have the latest version, and we're ready to install it. For that, I'm going to come down here, I'm going to open up Blender 3.5 in my case, or another version in your case, and then we can come up here to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, then click Install, and we have to find where that is. So we can come here to Downloads, and then I just need to find where it was. Here it is, Image Matcher, and then click Install Add-on. And then just give it a little bit of time to do its installation, and then when it's finished, in a minute, it will pop up here and say Export Image Matcher. If you open it up, you can see all of the description about what it is and so on. What you have to do is click this little tick box here to enable it. You'll also see that this plugin requires a few dependencies, mainly OpenCV. So OpenCV is this big Python library which has a bunch of image analysis functions in it, and we need it for their PNP solving functionalities. So in order to install this, you should be able to just click the Install Dependencies button. But, and that's likely to happen here, if you're on Windows, you'll probably have to run Blender with elevated permissions to be able to do this. So here, like you saw as it popped up, it said that it couldn't install those dependencies. So if you do get that, which is normally the case if you're doing it on Windows, then you have to find it, right click on it and say Run as Administrator. And you say yes. And now we do exactly the same thing as we were doing. So we go Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, we find Image Matcher, we can just search for it, open it up, and now we can click Install Dependencies, and that should all work fine. Okay, then if you give it a few seconds, it should say OpenCV is installed, and now you know that the plugin is ready to go and we can start actually doing some image matching. Okay, so first step for actually matching your images is we have to split our window into two. We need one window for our 2D images and one window for our 3D model. So you just come up, hover over this top left corner until you get this cross, and then just drag it across to split it into two windows. So for the left one, you have to come up to this little icon here, click on it, and change it to a movie clip editor. And then you'll see this image match tab here, which is where everything to do with the plugin lives. This is where all of the options are. So now we want to load our images. So we can click here on this file path and then find the 2D images that you want to match. So actually, before I do this, I'm going to show you how to get the same data. So what we're using is some example data from the British Museum, a 3D model, and some 2D images of this Ramesses II statue. If we come here, let me go into the tutorial. So if you go into that tutorial, you'll see that there's links at the top to these websites, so where you can download these. So the top one is the British Museum Sketchfab, so you can see the 3D model here. If we want to download that, we just click on download 3D model and then OBJ. I've already done this, so I'm not going to do it again, but just download it and you'll have it. For the 2D images, we come to the British Museum's website on this page for this statue, and you'll see you have all of these images at the bottom here. You can click the arrows to move between the different images. You'll probably have to click the right one quite a few times before you see these close-up images. But once you get there, you can click on them to preview them. And if you want to download them at full resolution, you can click use this image and then scroll down to where it says download this image. Note that you can only use these for non-commercial users. So click download this image and then you'll have that image. So what I've done is I've already gone through that process and I have my 3D model here. Inside you'll see a source and a texture folder. You want the source and then Ramesses II. And then you have two versions of the model. One which I believe is a 1 million vertices one, so a slightly lower resolution, and then a higher resolution 3 million vertices version. For the images, I've just downloaded a selection of 2D images and I'll show you matching a couple of them, but there are many on the website. You can use whichever ones you want. Okay. So with that said, let's go back to Blender and let's open some of those images. So here I'm going to go into images and let me just check which ones are good. I'm going to use this one, 056. So I just click on it, click accept, and then click add image. If everything works, you should see it pop up here. Just going to pop this to the side. And there it is. If you're not familiar with Blender, to navigate in this little 2D view, you use the middle mouse button and drag to pan around, and then you can scroll in and out to zoom, and that's pretty much all you need for this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and load the rest of the images. I think I'll just do one other one so I can show you two images. So now I'm going to load 063 as well. So I click accept, add image, and here we see another image. So if you want to swap between these, you'll see that they all appear in this little list of loaded images here, which you can expand if you have a lot of images. And if you want to swap between them, you just click this little icon. So click and click just to swap between them. Okay, so now we have our images. We also need our 3D model. So we can come out here to File, Import. We're going to use the OBJ import, but if you have a 3D model in any other format, you can use whatever the relevant option is here. So we're going to use OBJ. And I'm going to use the slightly lower resolution version, just so these things are a bit faster. So I'm going to use this 1million.obj and click Import Wavefront OBJ. Okay, and then you'll probably see something like this, where you're like, I don't know where it is. This is because this model loads really massive. So if you zoom out, you can see, there it is. So I'm actually just going to scale it down a little bit. You can click S on your keyboard and then just move inwards and then click to confirm. There we go. Okay, so now we have our 3D model loaded. And if we want to see it in color, we can come up here, scroll over and click this little icon. And now we can see our 3D model. If you're not familiar with Blender, to move around in this 3D view, you use the middle mouse button and drag to rotate. You hold down Shift on your keyboard and then again use the middle mouse button and drag to pan. And you can scroll in and out to zoom in and out. And that's pretty much all you need to do this whole process. Okay, so now we have our 2D images, we have our 3D model as well, and now we want to match them. So the way that the plugin works is it uses something called a PNP solver, a perspective endpoint solver, and that relies on having corresponding points between your 2D image and your 3D model. What I mean by that is if I zoom in on this area that's shown in the image, a corresponding point is something that you can see in both. So for example, like this little point where the two circles meet would be, so now I've got to make sure I'm not doing it wrong here, would be this one. Or this bit down here where, you know, this line meets this line would be this one over here, and so on. So when you're choosing these points, make sure you're choosing things that are easy to see in 2D and 3D. So normally corners or the intersection of lines or something like this. And trying to make sure that you're choosing points that are spaced out over your image as well. Don't choose all your points in one tiny area. You're not going to get a great match that way. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually do that now. So the first thing is you have to click here on this little eyedropper and select your 3D model. Now that that's done, we can click here to go into point mode, and that will allow us to just left click to place points in both the 2D and the 3D view. So I click here, I find an area that I can find in both. So for example here, where these circles meet, and I just click to add a point, and then I click over here and I add another point. You can see here that our 3D points are quite small, so I'm actually going to increase their size a little bit. I'll fix that now. You'll see to get out of point mode, you have to right click or use escape to cancel. So I normally right click to exit out. You'll see that that blue disappears. That means that you're not in point mode anymore, and now you can interact with everything in the menu again. So fixing the point size. If you want to make your points bigger, you can just click in this box, enter a bigger value like 1 and click update. So you can see that got a lot bigger there. That's a bit too big, so maybe I'll go 0.5 instead. Yeah, that's a bit better. It just makes it easier to see exactly where it is. Okay, so now let's add some more points. You want to have at least 6 points to be able to do all the steps in this workflow. So let's add 6 points. We've got 1, and again, we want to space them out. So let's go right over the other side where these 2 circles meet. Let's also do some at the base. So for example, here and here. And this one down here would also be good, this little dent. So there and there. You can see your points added as you go down here. So at the moment I have 4 points, so I need 2 more. So I'll use this one here and this one here. And why not? I'll go for a sort of central one here where these 2 meet. So that would be... it's a little bit harder to see on the 3D model. Let's say around there, and we can always move it later if it's not so good. Okay, so I right click to come out of point mode. I have my 6 points, I can scroll down, and if you want to check your correspondences, you can click on them and it will highlight the corresponding points. So you can see this 2D point is highlighted and also this 3D point, and then you can just click on them as you go down or use your arrow keys up and down to cycle through them and just check that each of your correspondences looks sensible. In this case, they all look pretty good, so let's go to the next step. Okay, so the next step is calibrating the intrinsics of your camera. This means parameters about how your camera itself is set up, things like the focal length and the optical center and so on. In general, the focal length is the most important one, and you can normally get away with just setting that and nothing else. If you already know the focal length of the camera that you use to take these images, you can just come down here to current camera settings, enter in the focal length here, and then you can just skip to the next step and you're done. If you don't know it, or you're getting bad results later on, you can calibrate it here. And what it'll do is it will use your points to estimate what it should have been. In general, I recommend leaving it like it is now, just calibrating the focal length and nothing else. But again, you can calibrate these other parameters if you want to. So you just click calibrate camera, and then you'll see your reprojection error appear down here. For the reprojection error, smaller values are better. And in general, I found that a value below 10 tends to mean that it's a pretty good match. But that will depend on the image and the 3D model. So always check your matches, see what it looks like in the end. Also, something to note is if you change your points, so for example, you can also delete your points and change them. If you do that and you want to calibrate again, then it's worth resetting your camera and then calibrating it, because it'll always kind of iterate from its current position. So just bear in mind, if you change your points or you want to redo your calibration, click reset camera and then click calibrate camera again. In this case, I think that this should be already good, so we're not going to do that. Okay, so the next step is to solve the camera pose. This figures out the position and the orientation of the camera in 3D space using your points. So we just click here, look at our reprojection error. This seems like it should be good. And now if we want to actually check the match, we can click toggle camera view. So now we're in the camera view. We can see our 3D model and we can see our 2D image on top. You can click this button here to toggle the 2D image on and off. And we can see that actually this is a very nice match. Again, it's not perfect, so if you look, for example, over here, you see it's not matching so well over there, but equally, we didn't have any points. And if we're mostly concerned with the central region, I think this is totally fine. You can also do it by dragging this opacity slider left and right, so you can sort of gradually change the opacity and check that you're happy with the match. In this case, I'm happy with this. If you can't see your 3D model, let me just pop into it again. If you can't see your 3D model in background, you might have to change your clip distance. This controls how close and how far away the camera actually shows. So if you can't see it, try increasing your end clip distance. In this case, it's totally fine. I'm not going to change it, but just bear that in mind. If you can't see it, have a go at changing the clip distance. Okay, so at this point, we have matched one image. This all looks good. I'm just going to show you the same example for a second image, and then we'll call it a day there. So let's swap over to our other image. We just click this little button here. You can see we're in this camera view, but it's at some random location, so we can just rotate out of it and zoom out a bit. If you want to center on your model, a good trick to know is you can click on it or click on it over here, and then you can use the full stop, the period key on your numpad to center it. You can also use view and frame selected, and that will also center it. So if you're at some, weird location, you don't know where you are, you can go view, frame selected, and it will snap you back. That can be quite useful. Okay, so let's match this second image. It's exactly the same process as before. We need to place a series of corresponding points. You see here we have these hieroglyphics on the back. This actually makes it a bit simpler to do these matches because we have a lot of corners and we have a lot of intersecting lines and so on. So let's go into point mode and let's add some points. So I'm going to do here on the end of this thing. And then where else? I might do up here as the second one. And then for the third one, I might do here where these intersect. You see, I'm trying to sort of space them out, so that's why I'm sort of scrolling to different areas and trying to make sure that I'm not just choosing everything from one region. So here I'm gonna choose the outside of this edge here, which would be here. Now I'm up to 4 points, so I need 2 more. So let's do something from this other side. So maybe like the bird. Maybe like the tip of the bird here. And then I need 1 more. Where haven't I been yet? So now I'm just sort of zooming out and trying to see, are there any areas that don't have a lot of coverage? And I'd probably say like maybe over this side in this area. So maybe we'll take this zigzag and I don't know, maybe we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe we'll go 5 in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 in. And then right click to exit. And those should be good, we'll see. And now we can do the same thing. So calibrating the camera, we can click calibrate camera. And we see this one has an even lower reprojection error, so it should be a good match, we'll find out. And then we solve camera pose, and again, very good reprojection error. Now we can toggle the camera view. Now we see our 3D model in the background with the 2D image on top. We can toggle them on and off. You see that matches quite nicely. If this grid is getting in the way and is kind of distracting, you can come up here to the overlay and turn off the floor. See, that makes it a little bit easier to see. So now when we turn it on and off, we see that looks quite nice. And again, we can change the opacity if we want a sort of smoother blend in and out. But at that point, we have matched 2 of our images. So at this stage, if you want to export those matches, just the positions of them, you can come down to the export tab. I'm not going to do it here because I don't have a reason to, but this is all described in the documentation. You can just give it a file path and click export, and it'll give you a little text file, and that'll give you the positions and the orientations of all of the cameras in the scene. If you want to make a nice video like I did originally, that I was showing you at the beginning, you'll have to have a bit more experience with Blender and how to do animations and lighting and so on. But if you are an experienced Blender user, I added another tutorial on that main website here. If you scroll down, it's just here, this video tutorial, which is sort of a shorter guide to how you might be able to make a video of that kind. But again, you're going to have a nicer time of it if you're a bit more experienced with Blender. If you haven't used Blender much, then, go on YouTube, get a bit of experience, and then come back to it. So that is the entire process. Now we have our matches done. If I hop back into the camera view over here, you can see we've got this nice match. If you want to quickly swap between and compare your matches, you can also click on your little icons while you're in the camera view, and then you'll be able to just quickly snap between them. And that's everything. Great.